Instead she said, "I'll leave these here." "Sure. Right," replied Tianyu, who looked just as tired ironing as he had walking by earlier. He might not be enthusiastic about ironing, but Dr. Liu would chew him out if his uniform was wrinkled. It was probably more convenient to use the iron here than to get one going at home. He didn't so much as look at Maomao. Was he concentrating that hard, or did he just not care enough to look up? Maomao was not bothered either way. She placed Dr. Liu's jacket by his desk. It was still a little damp, but she could not do much about that. The daily report he had been writing was on the desk. Maomao picked it up and looked through it. Nothing incriminating. Then she looked back over the entries for the past several days. There are none. If she was to take Dr. Liu's words at face value, a surgery had taken place. This surgery required the attention of a veritable crowd of doctors. She expected at least a mention of it in the report. Instead, the entries for recent days each read simply nothing unusual. He is hiding something, she thought, looking at Tianyu. That surgery must have been a real nightmare, huh, Tianyu, she said. After a moment he said, "It sure was. I have never worked so hard in my life." There was a slight delay. Was it because he was ironing, or was it a moment of confusion or hesitation? What kind of surgery was it? Maomao asked as she folded the jackets. "What does it matter? Nobody likes doing surgery," Tianyu said. His reaction was still hard to read. Did they do something to make him quiet? Maomao wondered. Tianyu's attitude toward Nen made him seem like someone incapable of taking a hint. However, he was at least intelligent enough to pass the medical exam. He also talked more than the other apprentice physicians. He could probably manage a lie or two if he needed to. Maybe I should have talked to someone else, Maomao thought, or at least I should have used Nen to get to Tianyu. She felt a pang of regret and patted the folded jackets. She would try one of the other apprentices. She looked out into the gathering dark, then went to collect the drying bandages. Maomao was sure of it. The doctors were secretly doing something that everyone around them considered taboo. Even with this certainty, she hadn't yet found out precisely what was going on. She couldn't exactly walk up to one of the apprentices and say, "Are you doing dissections?" It didn't help that few of them were as gregarious as Tianyu. Most were quiet and reserved. Then there was the rumor that talking to Maomao could draw the ire of the freak strategist. This left most people unwilling to speak with her one-on-one. Maybe Yao and Nen could help her somehow. No. She couldn't involve them in this when she didn't know what answer they had given Liuhemen. Her father had told them to forget the subject if they did not want to pursue it, so time passed, wasted and meaningless. When will we be going to the western capital? Jinchi had said 2 months. Maomao was starting to feel the pressure. However, she could not let it get in the way of her daily duties. Today, Yao and Nen were doing the laundry while Maomao stayed to watch the medical office. She realized that one corner of the office suddenly looked quite empty. Once crowded with equipment, books and other supplies that an apprentice had been using, it was now neat, orderly and much less cluttered than before. "Somebody decide to do some cleaning?" she asked. "He was transferred," said Dr. Liu. "He finished his apprenticeship." More or less, Dr. Liu replied as he made some notes in a book. In fact, the medical office near the military camp was a prime place for doctors to work. There were always plenty of injuries. This gave the apprentices a chance to hone their skills. Therefore, apprentices were sent here first to benefit from ample practice. After an apprenticeship of several months, they would be transferred to a different medical office. A physician's talent determined how busy his post would be. The reason Maomao's old man Liuhemen wasn't stationed near the military camp was because of the freak strategist. He intervened to make it so. "I would like to get out of here myself. The monocled old man has shown up nearly every day since Maomao's assignment here." Recently she was pleased to note there had been less of him. Perhaps this was due to his go game with Jinchi. Then again, he had seemed quite busy with something since the tournament. She did not really care what it was. She was just glad not to see him. Thankfully, she knew how to be grateful when it counted. She finished cleaning, as well as restocking some salves they had been low on and changing the bed sheets. "There is nothing else for me to do, so may I use the stove?" she asked, planning to boil something up. "I want to heat some wine to extract the alcohol." She needed enough to use on Jinchi. Liuhemen had the same idea once, quite a long time ago, Dr. Liu said. The mixture of frustration and bitterness on his face bespeak a woeful tale. But then he stepped outside to relieve himself, and someone foolish walked into the room with a lit pipe. Yikes, I'll bet that person was very singed after that. Anyone knew there could be only one outcome. Boom. The words were out of her mouth before she could stop herself, but Dr. Liu scowled. It is Liu Human's fault for not posting a warning. His distress made it obvious who the fool had been. This time, Maomao was at least wise enough to keep her mouth shut. Incidentally, the medical office bore a prominent sign forbidding smoking. Maomao was happy for these occasional glimpses into her father's past, courtesy of another physician who had known and worked with him for so long. She started to wonder if he might possibly tell her a little something about their time in the West. I wish I could just bring it up with him. She knew that if she brought up the subject incorrectly, it could have the opposite effect of what she intended. It was better to wait and let things unfold a little further. Also, it was better not to use the stove. You never know when someone careless might walk in while smoking. Here, use this brazier. Take it to the other room. I don't think it will get hot enough, sir. We don't need that much heat. Besides, I know you. You are wondering if there is something you can do to pass the time. Bullseye, he was sharp, as she would have expected of anyone who had studied alongside Liu Men. You might also be thinking no one will notice if you help yourself to a cup of the wine. Why did he have to be so damn sharp? Maomao took the rather large brazier. She also got a teapot, a distilling device with a pipe coming out of it, some disinfectant spirits and a bucket of cold water. Ah. Take these too, Dr. Liu said, piling on scissors, medicine packets and some powders. Make up 100 packages. Yes, sir. This was some make work for her. He obviously did not intend to give her the chance to have any free time. Maomao added some charcoal to the brazier and placed the distiller on it. Unlike the jerry-rigged distilling device she had made in the Jade Pavilion using whatever was at hand, this was a distinguished piece of equipment. There were two things that looked like stewpots with upside-down teapot spouts attached. One was above the other. Wine was put into the lower pot, heated to make it evaporate, and then it cooled in the upper pot. This produced the distilled alcohol. She thought, I wish I had one of these at the dorm. Building one of these was quite specialized and would require a lot of money. The device in front of her was made of ceramic. A metal one would only add to the cost. Perhaps they would give this one to me when it became old and they no longer needed it. It was nice to have things to want. She allowed her thoughts to wander as she packed the medicine into the packets. The medicine would be given to the officials who usually caught colds at this time of year. Like food, medicine lost its potency if it wasn't used quickly. She expected these packets would not last long. While Maomao was busily filling the small envelopes, she thought she heard someone arrive in the next room. Perhaps someone is injured. She tried to go back, but Dr. Liu was standing at the door. He met her with a sharp "Stay there and do your job." Then he went on, "We have a visitor, but we won't need tea. You don't have to prepare anything for us." Was this someone he'd rather not see too much of? Or perhaps someone he didn't want to waste the tea on? Maomao was puzzled, but she went back to stuffing envelopes. She did so for exactly as long as it took Dr. Liu to turn around. I sure hope it's not the freak strategist, she thought, pressing her ear to the door. She could hear Dr. Liu talking. He sounded uncommonly respectful and polite. It seemed he was speaking to someone more important than himself. "You want another capable physician, sir? I'm afraid you are really squeezing me dry." Who could he be talking to? Maomao wondered. Her question was soon answered. "I realize I am asking a great deal. In fact, I could use 2 more physicians." Even through the door she recognized that gorgeous voice. It wasn't quite as honeyed as it had been in the rear palace. Instead of honey, it had some ineffable quality that drew people to it. Less of a heavenly nymph and more of a heavenly immortal, It was, needless to say, Jinshi. "I have been giving the apprentice physicians the best training I can, just as you asked. However, they are still only halfway to full competency at best. They possess the fortitude but not the skill, or they have the skill but not the mind. Developing the skill and the mind takes time, if I may say so. Strength, mind and skill. Those were the proverbial ingredients for becoming a doctor. Is it not possible to let them learn through practical experience? Practical experience. Please, sir, spare a thought for the patients they would be learning on. It is true that practitioners of medicine seek to save people, but unfortunately we have no guarantee of success. Sometimes we fail, and then the patients or their next of kin sometimes have very unkind things to say to us. If you do not have an exceptionally strong heart, such moments will soon break you. Jinchi wanted a physician, but Dr. Liu was stonewalling him. Dr. Liu claimed they did not have enough people. There were fresh young doctors learning their trade, but it would not happen overnight. Is this about finding people to go with him to the Western capital? Jinchi seemed to feel he needed to take matters into his own hands. It was not easy being at the top. Strong-hearted people. I should think you have a few of those, Jinchi said, sounding almost light-hearted. Maomao began to suspect the request for more medical personnel was a way to get Dr. Liu to send her along with Jinchi. Maomao recalled Dr. Liu normally attended to the imperial family. If Jinchi suddenly stopped summoning him, he might begin to suspect something. She knew how perceptive he was, and that was what made him so formidable. Dr. Liu said, if I had to choose, I would pick someone without too many ties to the capital. If they had an overprotective parent, it could only make things more complicated. Also, no one is eager to go that far away. His remark started rather pointedly. In fact, he seemed to have a very specific person in mind. They were discussing personnel for the trip to the Western capital. Perhaps including Maomao in the entourage wasn't the only reason for having more doctors. This trip was, after all, larger in scale than the previous one. The last trip had been almost covert. Maomao had found herself brought along almost without realizing what was happening. The group was not small, but considering Jinchi was a member of the imperial family, it hadn't been very large either. Shea was in the west and Hokyuaran was in the north. Li was separated from Hokyuaran by a large mountain range. The peaks were several li tall and said to be all but impassable. Most armies from the north actually appeared from the northwest, where the mountains ended. That was at least the claim of one of the reading problems on the court lady's exam. If Hokyuaran were to make a move, they would appear north of the western capital. I can't believe I still remember that. I suppose I can thank that old woman. The madam had not been willing to allow Maomao to try to learn everything in a single night. Maomao was so busy listening that she did not notice the distiller was empty. It had begun to produce a strange smoke. Until then she sniffed the air and slowly, fearfully looked back. The moment she saw the smoke, she rushed over and dumped water on the brazier to put the fire out. Her reactions were swift, but the people in the next room could not miss the noisy splash of water. "What's going on in here?" asked the exasperated visitor Jinchi, as Maomao had guessed. "I just sort of fell asleep on fire watch," said Maomao, who was gloomily using a handkerchief to mop up the water. "Interesting. Does fire watch involve leaning against a door?" "Because I can clearly see the imprint on your cheek," said Dr. Liu. Maomao slapped her hand over her right cheek, but it was too little too late. She didn't say anything. They didn't say anything. She had been caught eavesdropping, quite clearly marked or perhaps red-cheeked. She looked away from Dr. Liu, but he continued to watch her. He then grabbed her and put her in a choke hold. Yow ow ow, she scrambled back onto her haunches. They could not have been overly concerned about being overheard, or they would not have left her in the room right next door. It seemed it was a matter of principle. Jinchi looked as if he was about to burst out laughing, and he was trying very hard not to. Basin stood beside him, along with two other men Maomao thought were guards. It wasn't easy being handsome, apparently. Jinchi successfully controlled his laughter and coughed in his most somber manner. "Dr. Liu, may I ask you something?" "Yes, sir. You told me the apprentice physicians were still only half ready. But what is your opinion of the occupants of the newly created post? The court ladies assigned to your office. I'm not sure what you mean." "They are court ladies, sir." "Yes, but from what I have heard, the work they do is very nearly the same as that of the apprentice physicians. This means that if they had the mind, skill and strength you spoke of, they could conceivably be promoted to be physicians themselves, could they not?" The people around Jinchi looked at him in astonishment. Court ladies promoted to doctors. It seemed theoretically impossible. Dr. Liu would not likely stand there and let someone dictate things to him, not even the emperor's younger brother. But pressing the point would only make things harder for Maomao, so she remained quiet. She had come to understand how Jinchi thought quite well during their acquaintance. Not everything he did made sense to her, but she saw what he was trying to say. What should she do? How could she help? One such lady is right here, sir. If you would have her, she said. Ho, well, how strong of heart is she? Jinchi leered at Maomao. It was not a friendly smile, but a mischievous one. This son of A, whose fault was it that she had to be wiping his ass? Perhaps the skin of his rear end would be the perfect solution. She resisted shooting back at him aloud. Maomao here is audacious, and that is it, Dr. Liu said. Above all, she is a woman. She can never be a doctor. He has me there, she thought. She did not specifically want to be a doctor. She had simply been led to need a doctor's skills. I am an apothecary. That is how Liuhumen had raised her. She wanted surgical training to save more people, but it would not distract her from her true calling. Meanwhile, she did have pride in being an apothecary. Didn't I hear you say I am even better at mixing medicines than some of the apprentice physicians, Dr. Liu? She asked. He gave her a withering look. She trembled with the frustration of knowing this was not a situation where she could talk back to him, knowing she just had to ride this out. I do not need a physician proper on this occasion. Jinchi said, as long as they have skills equal to our own, I do not care if it is the town doctor, or even someone from the apothecary. I can grant them special permission. Are you certain you cannot find me at least 2 more people with those qualifications? He clearly meant more than he was saying directly. Maomao knew this tone well. In the rear palace, it had always signalled his most bothersome requests. This would be as much of a nuisance as any task he had given her before. However, it also promised to satisfy Maomao's intellectual curiosity. She would not get another chance like this. If they could persuade Dr. Liu, she would have an opportunity to learn something entirely new. She felt her heart start to race, and with it came a pleasant thrill and a decidedly less pleasant cold sweat. She clenched her fists. Dr. Liu gave her a long, hard look. It clearly told her to refuse. She thought, I can't do that. Instead, she knelt on one knee before Jinchi. I'm an apothecary, sir, if you would indeed accept me. The corners of Jinchi's mouth twitched upward. You heard her. What is your professional opinion, Dr. Liu? For a moment, Dr. Liu gave Maomao a silent glare. And here she had expected that he would give her work a fair assessment in comparison with the apprentices and the other assistants. Was it really such a problem that she was a woman? Finally he said, she is an apothecary, as she says, but some problems cannot be treated with herbs. Isn't it the job of her medical superior to do something about that? If she needs to learn more than just about herbs, can she not be taught? Maomao could not see Dr. Liu because of her deep bow, but she knew at that moment he must be gritting his teeth and controlling his rage. I am sure I can trust you to do what needs to be done, Dr. Jinchi said, and then he left the room. Basin obediently followed him, but not without a sympathetic glance at Dr. Liu. With Jinchi gone, the silent stare only intensified. All Maomao could offer was a weak smile. Give me your head. One time and we will call it even. Yes, sir. His knuckles slammed into her skull. It was actually quite painful. He could have challenged the old madam herself. I will let that slide for now. Dr. Liu groaned. Curse Liuhumen, he has given me a real troublemaker. He fell into his chair and angrily sucked on his pipe. So he had heard the story from Liuhumen. Perhaps he was planning to play dumb. In a way, it was very good luck that Jinchi had come. Dr. Liu continued to puff away, still openly annoyed. Should you be smoking, sir? Maomao asked, gesturing at the sign. Right now. Yes, be good enough to look the other way this once. Don't you have some cleanup left in the other room? Oof, look who's feeling salty. Still, Maomao knew better than to needle him further. She went into the next room. She looked at the inundated brazier and broken distiller and put her head in her hands. The still alone was worth 6 months' salary for her. Chapter 9, The Message. At his villa, Jinchi received a letter. The message was written not on wood strips and not on paper, but on parchment. It was rolled up and tied, then sealed with wax. Different lands had their different ways of sending letters. This method was characteristic of the West. Gaeshan confirmed Jinchi's suspicion. He said it is from the western capital. Yes, Jinchi agreed, it is from Sir Jiaoku-o. I know perfectly well they have paper over there these days. Jinchi continued, even in the West where trees to make paper were scarce, it was still cheaper than parchment. He took another look at the seal, confirming it was the one he expected. He had grown quite familiar with it recently. It looked very much like the brand now burned into his flank. He tugged at the tie, trying to break the seal, but it resisted his efforts. The material looked delicate enough to be cut, surely. "Do you have scissors, Gae-shun?" Jinchi asked. "Here, sir." Jinchi broke the seal and sighed. If Basin were here, he would have immediately begun questioning Jinchi about what could inspire such a reaction. But Gae-shun knew better. He waited for Jinchi to speak. "Do you want to read it?" Jinchi asked.